y'all, I'm Cece, and today I am here to guide you through my 2025 Notion setup. So I've been using Notion for a while now as a creator, but it's also become very important to me in keeping track of my personal life, my art life, everything. And I wanted to show off my 2025 notebook, let you see how it's set up, maybe give you a sneak peek into some of my many other Notion databases. If you are not aware of it, Notion is a free online tool. There are paid versions of Notion. I have used the free version the entire time that I have had access to it, and I've literally never run into a problem. I use it every single day, so if you're looking for an app or a service or something to kind of organize your life, I would definitely recommend Notion. There is just a little bit of a learning curve, but I think it's worth it. And this video isn't sponsored by Notion or anything, but hey, if they want to sponsor me. So the board that I call my 2025 notebook is one that kind of changes year to year, and I use it kind of as a journal. It started as a place to keep track of media and memories, and then I've kind of changed layouts every single year as I've learned more about what things I like about certain layouts or what things I need to eliminate. 2025 marks the 5th year that I have done a yearly notebook, which is wild to me. I do keep my old year's notebooks archived so I can reference them, look back at them later, so you might be getting a peek at some of my other ones. I'm going to be showing you my 2025 book database, which is where I keep all of my reading notes and my stats for the year. I also keep track of the movies and the television I watch, plus there are a few other journaling, planning, layouts, that kind of thing. So if any of that sounds interesting to you, maybe grab a cozy drink, settle in, we can talk about Notion and how I organize my life and my books. If you love Notion, if you love books, if you love queer books, then please consider checking out some of the other videos on my channel. I talk about queer lit all the time. You can also find me all over the internet creating art and talking about the stuff that I love. All of the links for that in the description below. Please check them out. Okay. Let's get into this Notion board. So much like the rest of the internet, I spent the beginning of 2025 obsessed with Severance on Apple TV, and I did use that show as kind of my jumping off point for how I wanted this year's notebook to look aesthetically. We're going green for lumen and for macro data refinement. It's okay if you don't know what any of that means. And don't worry, I won't be spoiling anything. I just used the show as kind of an aesthetic basis to pick beginning colors and to pick design elements and that kind of thing. So I want to start by giving you just a slow scroll over the layout of the whole page. You can see that there are some quick spots over here where I could jump around if I wanted to. But I can just do this kind of scroll. You can get an idea of what we're looking at. All the way down. There we go. So this year the layout has been moved around more based on the mobile version. There were just a lot of issues I was running into at the end of 2024 using the databases on my phone, and I wanted to make that as streamlined as possible. So there are a few different elements of my 2025 notebook that are done with that in mind. I realized I had a habit of wanting to go make a note about a book or a movie, and I would open up Notion and the link to whatever board I wanted wouldn't be right there. So I would immediately forget what I wanted to do. For memory's sake and for the ease of taking notes, links to different media at the top of the page. So there are 3 main databases that I have set up for this year, and those are my book list, my movies and TV list, and then my genres list. Last year I kept all my media in one database, and I found that more annoying the more that I was reading. There are just too many things that I want to keep track of that are completely separate pieces of information for a book versus a movie and a TV show. Some have direct genre crossover and some don't. I wanted to keep track of authors, which is separate from keeping track of my favorite actors. Yes, I do have a database for that. I wanted to have access to my book notes more regularly than my other media notes because I make videos about books. That's the notes I'm going to be using the most often. So it just made the most sense for me to split everything into their own category this year, and it has been a very nice change so far. I am gonna come back around to this stuff at the top. There are just things I want to get through first. I don't know if it makes sense to do it that way, but that's how I'm doing it. So let me open up one of my currently reading pages, and I can kind of show you what it looks like. Let's go with Sunrise on the Reaping. So as one of my currently reading pages, this is not gonna have everything filled out yet. That's kind of the purpose of a in progress page. Stuff like release year, that if I just know it, I'll enter it when I create a new currently reading page. But really, release year, the page count, the genre and age group, all of that stuff I kind of mark and track at the end of that reading process, so I only complete all of that stuff once I'm done with a book. One of the ways this is different is just because I keep track of things like how long it takes me to read. And I don't know if this option exists. Currently, I don't think so. I would like a way that I can set a book as active and then mark it as done, and then Notion would know the time period. Point really is just that I don't like entering dates until I have the full date, because otherwise it messes with math on various databases. There's a little thing here that has rating and stars. Stars is actually a formula. It has a formula for displaying emojis for stars and half stars. So if I go into rating and enter a number between 1 and 5, I can also add a 0.5 onto any of them, like say 4. Then 4 stars pop up. If I added a 0.5, that's how I get my little half star, but I am going to erase that again for now because I have not finished this book. Tags are going to continue to grow, but this is a multi-select option, and it is what I'm using to keep track of genre, age group, that kind of thing. This is also where I try to keep track of representation. We've got a single select option for format. That means I can only select one of the options on here: physical, digital, or audio. Below that is where I have my little formula where it calculates how many days are between my date started and date finished. And it pops that number in there, and it is because in my main books database, I have a thing that's getting the average of all those durations. And then below that, this is just a notes section I recently added for setting. I don't know if I'm going to use it, but I kind of was curious about keeping track of where some of my books are set this year. I also have some hidden properties. Those are more to do with other formulas that have to get done or ways that books are displayed. So if you look back at this screen, it says Sunrise on the Reaping, and then it says author, Suzanne Collins. Normally, it would just say Sunrise on the Reaping and then Suzanne Collins. Part of the template that I have set up is that it automatically adds this little column, and that way, when I am looking at my home page, I can see the authors and the titles. So below all that initial info, we have down here author. Again, it's just for my notes, so I have it. And then this is also where I tag the day that I start reading. That's how I always know what my start date is. I open up a new page as soon as I start reading a new book, click create, and then scroll right down to this section in Notion, type @ and then options will pop up, and I will usually just select the option that says today. So that's what I did for Sunrise on the Reaping. It is just that that @ has updated in the days since, so it's an active tag. It'll keep track of the exact calendar date. It's just something useful. And then below that, we have quotes and notes. Notes is for whenever I have thoughts on a book. I read a lot of books on my phone. I have a lot of thoughts about those books. I also have been listening to more audiobooks now, and I've just wanted to have my book notes in a more single, consolidated place, so that's what this does for me. And then quotes is actually something that I usually do at the end of the reading process, and that is only for digital books. When I read on Libby, I highlight a lot. When I am done with a book, I go back through and I find all of those highlights and I put all of those quotes in my Notion, because I don't have a physical copy and I want to remember the things that were important to me and that influenced me. Also, if I really love a book, then I can get a physical copy, and then I have kind of all my original notes that I can put into that physical copy, which is something that I'm working on right now with a couple of different books. I do have a custom little button here, new quote. If I click it, it just inserts a quote above it. That is another quick thing for my phone, because I'll be copying and pasting and I don't want to have to add a new block and then turn that block into something else. I want to just be able to say, okay, new quote. You know, let me show you a completed book versus one of these non-completed ones. Let's do Love and Other Disasters by Anita Kelly. Here you can see this is all filled out. Another thing that I check at the end of the reading process is I tend to do research on authors, and if they have any public pronouns listed, I like to add those to my notes so that I know and I can reference them when I'm doing videos. So I also have the release year, so I can see what range of years I'm reading from, the number of pages, so I can calculate how many pages I'm reading per month and per year. Here's a little filled out version of the 4.5 star, what that looks like. And then you can see that I started the book on March 23rd and finished it on April 7th. And if you pop down here to days read, lets me know that that was 15 days that it took me to read this book. Really, it probably took me like 3 sittings, but those 3 sittings were spread out over 15 days. This is an adult romance. I need to make a tag for romance. I currently don't have one. And both of the narrators of this book are queer, so it does have an LGBTQIA+ lead. And then if you scroll down, you can see my started reading tag, which has continued to update since the day that I marked it. Today I started reading. And you can see all of my notes and the quotes. I will say it's fun to look back through my notes on some of these because with romance books like Love and Other Disasters or Clique Cute, I just get more overwhelmed the more I read the book. So by the time I get to the end, I'm highlighting every other line so that I can just have a full breakdown about how much I am obsessed with those people. Those wonderful, wonderful fake people and their love that they have for each other. Oh, I can also show you, for example, something like Drowning. I have created this special block that just links my story graph review that is, again, in the interest of keeping everything consolidated, everything about the books I read this year in one place so that I never have to go hunting for things. And then let me actually just open books so I can kind of show you. This is my books database. You can see that some of it is filled out. Some of the bottom here, I still have some work to do. But hey, for those who wanted a sneak peek into what I'm reading this year, pause and you get to see it. So I have this filtered to only include books that I have completed, and that is so it can do all of my fun math that I've been mentioning. At the bottom, I have it count how many books I've read this year, so right now we're at 19. We also, on this one, have an average page count, which I was just kind of curious about, so it takes all of my page counts for every book. Lets me know that apparently about 306 pages on average, which sounds about right to me. This also shows me my average rating, which is something that is offered by like Storygraph and Fable, but I think we've realized that I like having my own info. And then finally, that math problem that I've been mentioning this whole time, here is the average for number of days that it takes me to read a particular book. So some of these you can see, 0 days. I'm still not sure how I want to calculate those because I did take 1 day to read them. I don't know, if people have advice on that, let me know. Another way that page counts are really useful is if I open another one of the views of this database over here, I have this one filtered to only include books that I read within a certain period of time. So I'm currently working on my wrap up for the first quarter of the year, that is January, February, March. I read 10 books across those 3 months. I have this version of the database filtered to only show those 10 books. And over here, it gives me a little sum for page count, which I think is cool. That's a lot of pages. And then one other view of books that I wanted to show you is my status page. This is where you get the super sneaky behind the scenes. You get to see what I'm DNFing. You can also see what I'm DNFing if you follow me on Fable or Storygraph. I have not really been updating Goodreads as much currently. I'm giving 2 new apps a shot, but here it's really easy for me to kind of open up, take a look at what my shelf looks like for 2025, all of the books that I've finished, all of the books that I'm currently reading, and all of the books that I have started taking notes on and then said, I cannot finish this for whatever reason. Some of these books have been paused more than DNF'd, like The Haunting of Alejandra. I would really like to probably finish that. The Deep Sky is also just on pause. I can pretty confidently tell you that books like The Troop and The Winter Night are DNF'd. I am not finishing those books, but I did have some notes to take about them. here they are. Let me take us back to our main page, the 2025 notebook. So the other thing that you can see down here that's tagged as currently is my TV and film database. These are just all of the shows that are marked currently watching, anything that I am working on at present. I use these individual pages much less than my book pages, but they are still pretty fun, so I kind of want to show them off. Let's go to movies and TV. Okay, so this is actually very interesting to me. This is pretty much the only place where I keep track of all of the movies and TV that I watch. So this is the only place I know of where I can kind of see my average rating across movies and television, whether that's new things or things I'm rewatching. Letterboxd is great for keeping track of movies, and I always keep track of when I watch new movies, but I never mark rewatches, so I have a ton of different views for this database, but I'm gonna focus on just one of these pages specifically. Let's go with Cuckoo. Yeah, so that one opens up to the side here, and you can see that we have release date, star rating, that's the same as my book layout. It is a visualization of the number 4 that I have down here, and then the date that I watched this movie. And then this database is linked to my genre database, and that is what these genres are right here. We also have LGBTQIA here as a genre because I wasn't sure at the beginning if I wanted to make that a genre or just one of the tags. So now it's both. Tags are my favorite thing to create in my Notion board every single year. I always try to do new ones because they always end up entertaining me, and that's all they have to do. I actually would love to show you some of my previous year's tags, so let me take us to my notebook of notebooks. Last year, I found myself in a rut where I just kept watching movies and TV, and they would be about the worst man to ever exist. And so I started keeping track of them as a tag while I was reading and watching throughout the year. I also just make these up as my genre tags. I was always really fond of, is there sci-fi in this? Also a very big fan of Keep Feeling Animation. In 2023, my tag for animation was also a song. Anime, good times, come on. A couple years before that, 2022, I really loved my Did We Just Become a Family tag. There are movies or shows that I watch every year, and the only reason I watch them is because I am unhealthily obsessed with an actor that appears in that movie or show. I have gone to the depths of IMDb filmographies. The places I've been. For 2022, my tag was here to see My Little Boy Cuckoo. While I was very excited for the movie in general, it is a movie that I was watching exclusively because I have a special fixation on Dan Stevens. I love him. It's important to me that Notion knows that if I am watching something with Dan Stevens, there are hearts in my eyes. Also this year I'm taking things queeriously, so that's my LGBT tag. Also last year was the origin of the tag, it's autistic. Boogie woogie woogie. Tags aren't serious for me or anything. I use them to keep track of genres, but I also use them to keep track of little odd themes that I notice in the media that I'm watching. The list for 2025 is not nearly as long, and that is because I will continue to make these tags probably all the way into December. So next property is actually a link to another database. It is my featured creators database, and I am a little too embarrassed of that one to show it to you, to be honest. It is a place where I keep track of some of my most watched actors, directors, writers, that kind of thing. It started as a fun little project. Now that it's been going for half a decade, it's a little alarming. But you can see for something like Cuckoo, the only 2 names that I had to tag that were already in my database were Dan Stevens and Jessica Henwick. But if I open something else, let me see, what could I open? Yellow Jacket Season 3, maybe. You can see the list, there's 5 people. The maximum number that it lists are 5 people. So with a movie I rewatched Mr. and Mrs. Smith. It's like a comfort movie for me. That movie has so many actors in the most minor roles that are like big actors. It's wild. Anyway, you can see that I've tagged them all here, as well as the director, Doug Liman, because he's one of my favorite directors. And then obviously down here we have status, which can be done, currently watching, didn't finish. I don't really mark movies as currently watching. I really only add movies when I'm done watching them, but that's how I sort out the little currently tab on my main page of my Notion. Anything that I've tagged as currently is going to be in there. So that's stuff like week to week, The Last of Us. I can't watch all of it, so I'm gonna keep working on it. Or shows that I'm just working on in general, like Battlestar Galactica was on my currently list for most of the beginning of this year. Actually, let me show you what happens when I create a new page in here, because I think that'll interest you. Click new. So this layout is the same, but if you scroll down here, you can see that I have 4 different templates that I can kind of populate with certain information. This is another thing that's changed a lot, but I think I'm happy with it this year. So I just have this color-coded. Blue icons are for if something is new to me. Pink icons are if I rewatched something. And then you can see I have the sort of half circle icon for series, and then the almost filled circle icon, the one with like half filled with lines, those are movies. It's just a quick way to sort of visually look at my list and see if I've watched more new things, if I've been watching a lot of movies compared to TV, that kind of thing. And each of these just has standard settings that will put this where it needs to be. So if I clicked on, let's see, new movie, for example, we'd pop up a little section that has notes. We would automatically populate status with done, because I am not talking about movies until I am done with the movie. And then it did automatically fill the watch date as today, but I could change that if I wanted to. I do want to show you something else related to this particular database. I have a gallery view right here, and currently it is just a bunch of white spaces. Kind of seems pointless. This is here because of how older notebooks have been set up. So for the past few years, I've been teaching myself a lot about graphic design, and part of that has been making challenges for myself. I've been trying to practice font design and layout and composition and that kind of thing. So I use what I'm watching and what I'm reading as inspiration for that. The first couple years I was only focused on photo editing, so I would kind of edit and alter photos just to aesthetically represent each movie or show. Then, when I was teaching myself Illustrator, I realized I wanted other ways to practice and other ways to kind of stretch my creative muscles, which is when I started making my own graphics for the stuff I was watching. So if we open my 2022 notebook, you can see my gallery is full of pictures from like Pinterest or Flickr or Unsplash, and I've just done little edits on them to make them fit each movie more. God, scrolling through this is making me nostalgic for this way of doing things. Like, I really had to keep making it harder for myself. So 2023 is when I started creating graphics in Canva for my media journal and for personal use as like desktop wallpapers or laptop wallpapers. And it started with fairly basic edits. But the cool thing about this is that I can kind of scroll and see my skills improve over time. So these Mission Impossible ones at the top here are some more basic ideas or are just kind of revamped versions of some templates on Canva. I think this one for Wednesday was the first one that I ever made in Photoshop, but I really started getting into it with movies like Triangle and Escape Room, Dirty Dancing, White Lotus, and then Orphan Black and The Faculty, actually. Both feature title designs like fully designed by me in Illustrator, which was a wild process, but I learned a lot. And then by the end of the year, you have some of the more completed ones like Bullet Train and Nope, the Back to the Future trilogy, Runaway Jury. And then when you move into last year, that is when I really started being able to embrace a lot of different styles, and you can see that in some of my designs for stuff like Megan, The Fall of the House of Usher, Fallout, The Terror. But this led to me doing sometimes full full movie posters or edits and designs based on books I was reading. So here are a couple of the movie posters that I've made, or some of the graphics that I made based on What Moves the Dead by T. Kingfisher. If you're interested in these or anything else, I do have a digital shop linked down in the description below. That includes this full phone wallpaper set, but there are also other things available if you want to explore, check them out. Graphic design has been a huge part of my life for the previous few years, and part of what I like to see at the end of every year is how much I have evolved in those creative ways. Creating graphics for these has always been a key part of these notebooks, and it's not going to change anytime soon. I have been very focused on other art projects in 2025, so like I said, my 2025 notebook, a lot of white squares right now, but there are a few of these that I think I might want to go back to and make something, because they were movies that I'm still thinking about. Particularly the movie It's What's Inside. I think, I don't know, I have a lot of ideas for a movie poster for that one. But I've also watched a lot of indie horror this year that, like, I don't know, I think it'd be fun to start playing with some typefaces and stuff like that. Okay, so now I do want to go back to some of the stuff that I skipped near the top. We're gonna get to those little toggles. I love my little toggles. I like the option of being able to just close up a section of the page so I can scroll past it easily. That makes it nice to put these at the top of the page, but not have them take up too much time when I'm scrolling past them on my phone. First toggle up here is just a bunch of text, but it is one that I access a lot. It's called Shared Plots. Very silly. Last year, I started noticing weird, like, similar trends in the books I was reading, and so I decided this year to kind of keep track of those weird crossovers. So this year, whenever I notice one, I just open up this page, open the toggle menu, and add a new one to the list. Let me bring maybe one or two into focus. This one isn't hyper-specific, but books that are about complicated mother-daughter relationships. You can see I have Luis Ortega's Survival Club, Gay the Prey Away, Bad Creed, Not My Problem, Squad. 5 books currently listed. I can tell you that Squad was added yesterday to this list. So I started making that list much earlier in the year, started reading Squad, and I was like, I have another one. Some examples of some of the weird shared plots from last year. I read 2 books that featured I need this job so bad, you have to pretend to be my girlfriend as like a central plot line. I read, I think, 3 books about professional chefs. I'm guessing my list for 2025 will continue to evolve, and maybe we might get some more weirdly specific crossover elements. Right now it's kind of looking more like themes than weird shared elements. Point is that this is kind of a brain dump. It's something that I can open when I have a thought, and then I can close it again and not think about it, because my brain only wants to process this list some of the time. Below that toggle, we have a toggle for completed books. This has a couple little cool things I can show you. So it's loading right now, but eventually I can show you that I have, there we go, my board linked to Canva. I am a very visual person. I have a hard time keeping track of what I've read, what I've seen, if I can't look at it. So kind of my graphic design challenge that I've had this year is that I have been making versions of all of the books that I read. I make a version of their spine and put it on my little digital shelf. I am a little behind right now. Right now I only have through CleatCute. I will say I did design one for Love and Other Disasters. It's just currently covered by other things. But if you scroll down, you can see some of the other recent books I finished. Yeah, I have, what, 8? 8 books. It's fine. 8 books, so that is probably gonna fill the rest of this shelf. I can flip through these, so like if you click over here, then you can see some of my originals. And I have this in a toggle because I pretty regularly want to check my notes or see if I remembered something correctly for a book that I've read, so I want to be able to open up all of these little book note things pretty easily, and then when I'm done, I can close it, and I don't have to think about them. Oh, my little quote here is from Severance as well.
The work is mysterious and important.
Friends, if you haven't watched Severance, and you have the ability to watch Severance, please watch Severance. I've already shown you 2 of the main databases, but let me open up genres really fast. It's not very extensive compared to the other ones. This just displays movie and TV shows listed under the genres that they are. I am still messing around with this particular database. I'm not quite sure what I want to do with it yet. For right now, the main thing is that the numbers that are calculated by that database are displayed down here at the bottom of the screen. So this little bar chart, surprising to no one, sci-fi, drama, and horror, and thriller are easily my highest watched genres. Moving down around over here, below my boards, I have 2 more toggles. I love toggles! So these are ones that I open up when I am working on video stuff, art stuff, anything to do with business, social media. Please react to each of these links equally opens up a link to Canorium. Canorium is a place where I kind of keep track of TV, but really I use it as a better, easy access for movie posters and TV show posters. It's just a place that's easier to do that, that isn't IMDb, because I don't know if you've ever tried downloading a photo from IMDb, but it is nightmarish, and I would not wish it on my worst enemy, so Canorium is what I use instead. We also have a link to my Letterboxd, so I can make sure that that is updated with all the movies I've watched recently. And then my 2025 Queer Releases Goodreads. This is a tag. Ash from Smoked Shelves does an incredible job always updating these lists. I have very much relied on these Goodreads lists this year in particular. Those are linked there. And then if we go down into televisual planning, this is where we have links to my scripts and my notes. That is its own little database. Below that, we have a link to my YouTube studio. So that's just gonna let me get to right where I need to be working with my videos. Then we have a link to the homepage of Canva. I use Canva an unhealthy amount. I think I dream about Canva. And then we have my link to my Google Docs or my Google Workspace. I use Google Docs to fix captions for my videos, so I take over the automatic captions from YouTube, put them into a Google Doc, fix them all up, put them back into YouTube. It's where I edit the nonsense transcript and make it coherent. So televisual planning is basically just links that are really important to me when it comes to video creation. If you're getting overwhelmed, that's why I put a little snack here. Lumen provides snacks. You can only use 2 tokens a day. If you want some blueberries, some sunflower seeds, just take what you need. Bar graphs and charts are very new to Notion, and that is part of why I made genres its own database this year. I was curious what the different kind of charts and graphs would look like. This was my opportunity. So I do not really know how I want to use them and incorporate them into my Notion currently, but this gives me the opportunity to mess around with them a little bit. And then we have our last 3 toggles before we move on to the very, very bottom. We've got a coming soon toggle. This opens up to movies and shows that are releasing. What? Wait. I watched Love Hurts this weekend. It was terrible. Also currently watching The Last of Us and Andor. Basically, these are just releases that are going to be available soon, whether that's in theaters or on one of the streaming services that my roommate and I get. These are at the top of the list priority-wise. It's just easier for me to keep them in mind as the year goes on if I kind of write them down when we initially see a trailer. And then below coming soon, we have movie nights, double features, and themes. This is even more nonsense. Currently, it has 2 deeply nonsense things checked off in there, and that is because my roommate and I, we started this joke in February where we'd watched Gladiator 2 and Smile 2, and we kept saying 2 2s for 2 month. It's nothing. It's a joke that, in all honesty, didn't even really make us laugh. But after 2 2s for 2 month, kind of wanted to try 3 3s for 3 month, so... And then we stopped, because I knew if we kept going, we would really start getting silly with it. But the thing is, Brian and I love, like, a movie night, a double feature, or a theme month. So, inevitably, there are going to be more things that I add to this toggle, whether that be, like, full boards. I don't know. In previous years, I would have put these in just sort of a generic notes section on here, but I'm a movie person, we're movie people, and I thought those notes should get their own little special space. So down here is also where I will put the inevitable random few pages that I end up creating at some point over the course of this year. Some previous random boards include Severance brain dump notes, a guide for where to find 2023 Oscar nominees. One was a board that I created to help Brian and I watch a horror movie for every single day in October. I actually have a video about that one. There's also just this random page that I found. It's just notes Brian and I took when we were having a conversation about actors who had played superheroes in multiple cinematic universes. We got a little hyper-focused on it, if you can't tell. And then the last toggle down here is memory files. I am not going to open these up, but this is my mini journaling section. In previous years, I've had more dedicated locations for this, but how much I use it really varies. Like, I'm great at entering things at the beginning of the year, but the longer the year goes on, the more I forget to write what I did in September. So this is kind of buried down at the bottom, but I still wanted to give myself a way to remember things if something notable happens, if I want to be able to say, hey, I was thinking today about how this current event happened, and then I can look back on it in a few years and be like, you sweet summer child, you thought that's as bad as it was gonna get. So this is a way to dedicate a spot of this notebook to my memories without having it take up like a third of the page, which has been the problem in the past. And then the last thing that I have way down here, besides this random board that I've dropped, I'm not gonna talk about it. This is Refiners of the Quarter, and it is another version of my featured creators list that I mentioned earlier. So for movies and TV shows, I keep track of actors, directors, writers who I particularly like, and who are showing up a lot in what I'm currently watching. So I have this limited to only show movies and TV that I have watched this year with these actors, and then they're organized by the number of things tagged under each author. So currently, James Marsden is my winner. James Marsden, Hilary Swank, Aaliyah Shawat, and Tom Cruise. Those four are all tied for the fact that I've watched 3 things featuring each of them this year. There is a version of this database that keeps track of how many movies I watch every year for each of these actors and adds them all up. I'm a little scared of it. Although it's easy for me to say that a lot of Marvel actors really get an edge on other actors in terms of how many individual properties they're a part of. Oh, but I can also tell you that this is not currently updated because Micah Monroe should also have 3. I recently watched Watcher, so need to update that. Okay, let's see our movies and TV. I didn't really show you the fact that you can list these in your calendar. So if you look through the movies and TV's calendar view, then you can see how long it takes you to watch certain shows. Battlestar Galactica is dragged over weeks. Not dragged, I was very excited to be watching it, but it is extended over a long period of time. So is Severance, so is Yellow Jackets. But again, I think this is kind of fun because you can start to see visually when I was watching more movies and what days of the week I tend to prefer watching movies or shows. I also currently have this view which organizes things into decades. I have done that in previous years so that I can see, like, when I do a graphic for every single movie, I like to split the movies up in different ways so I can kind of see similarities that I might not have noticed between designs that I made for movies that were from the same decade. This is really just here right now so that I can see what decades I have been watching things from and what star ratings I've been giving them. So currently the earliest movie that I've watched is Top Gun. I am not much of a classic movies person, so I'm gonna be honest and say that there's a very, very low chance that this list ever reaches the 1960s. But we usually get at least one movie from the 70s in here, so fingers crossed. And that is just about it for what I'm covering in this video, folks. I hope it was interesting. I've had requests for years to make videos about my Notion and how I have it set up, and I thought this would be a slightly less intimidating place to start than, like, where I keep track of all the books I own. So I do have some very large databases and complicated pages. Let me know in the comments if you're interested in seeing any of those, or, like, what I could kind of show you about those pages. Some of my other big databases are Like I said, all of the books that I own, I also have a database for all of the physical and digital movies that my roommate and I own. I have my TV homepage, which is dedicated to keeping track of my entire history of television viewing. I also have quite a few pages that I spent a whole lot of time on and then abandoned completely. So if any of those sound remotely interesting, let me know and I can make that happen. For those of y'all still sitting here, thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed. Please let me know your thoughts about Notion, and if you use a different, like, app or service to schedule your life, to keep track of your life, let me know what that app or system is. I'm always looking for new ways to try to hack my brain. But other than that, thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed, and I will see you in another video very soon. Bye!